So Barbara, thank you for taking the lead on this one. We don't know how many students will come. We know that people are pretty zoomed out. I don't know if you've been on meetings, Susan, where there's more black screens with names than there are with faces, but every day in class, it's more and more. It's just we're, you know, the students are worn out.
I know.
So I appreciate all the students that are here. Some of you I don't know, but my name is Alice Del Vecchio. I'm the chairperson of our department. And thank you for taking a nice sunny afternoon and spending some time with us. So you're the heroes. I appreciate you. So Barbara, you want to start us off?
Yeah. So if everyone can make sure that they put their major, their name, and email, and tell us whether you're on or off campus this semester. And make sure your mics are muted.
And did you tell them why we want their names in there?
We're going to be doing a gift card at the end of this session, and you will be entered into a chance.
And we do it really high tech. You put it in the chat box, and I write it on a piece of paper, and I fold them up, and then we pick one. So that's how you get.
Super high tech.
Okay.
The Student Nonprofit Alliance is a pre-professional organization for students interested in working in the nonprofit sector. Our mission is to foster an understanding of, appreciation for, and a deeper commitment to the nonprofit sector. So today, I will be your host, Barbara, and today's speaker is Susan Tomlinson Schmidt. I probably mispronounced it.
Schmidt. But you did fine.
All right. So she's the president at the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance. She has a certificate of nonprofit professional, and she's given many keynote speakers addresses. Do you have a PowerPoint, Suzanne?
I do.
Okay.
Want to give me the reins?
Yes, I can. You should be able to.
Okay, let me get. Let me get this up. No, that's not. It's so hard. I struggle with two monitors to know which one to show you. So give me just a second.
So I've known Susan since 2020, I think. And she was a campus.
Oh no, it was way before 2020.
No, we didn't start till, 2000. I'm trying to say 20 years. And so she was the executive director for the campus at in Memphis, when I first started at Slippery Rock in the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance. So I've known Susan for a long time, and some of you have heard me talk about the group of faculty members from around the country that came to Slippery Rock to write the competencies, and Susan was part of that. And so she's a good friend as well as a wonderful colleague. So happy to have you with us, Susan. Thanks for being here.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you all. I did prepare a few slides, but mostly I just want to have a conversation about what you're worried about, what your anxieties are, and how we might calm some of that as you go into the world and look for a job. So are you seeing my screen that says what's next? Okay, cool. All right, well, you did a little bit of this for me, but quickly I would like to know where you are now and what you're thinking about. So are you going to move? Are you going to be a fundraiser? Do you want to work with children? Can we just go around? I'll do it in order of my screen, and just give me some idea of what kind of jobs you're thinking about and when you're going to graduate. And I will try to speak to some of that as we go through our presentation. So what about Jocelyn? You are on my screen first.
Yeah, I'm a sophomore and I'm studying communications and public relations.
Oh, great.
And I'm also a second major in nonprofit management, and I'm looking to work with children and youth.
That's a fabulous combo. Okay, children and youth in communications. And do you want to stay in that area of Pennsylvania, or are you going to relocate?
I'm not quite sure yet. I'm open.
You're young. Relocate's really big in looking for a job. So that's why I asked about that. What about you, Caitlin?
So I'm Caitlin. I'm also a sophomore. I live about an hour north of Slippery Rock. And I'm a professional writing major with a minor in gerontology, and I really want to advocate for older adults.
That is wonderful. That is so fabulous and very needed. So are you going to stay in this area?
I'm not sure. My family's all from this area, so maybe, but I'm kind of open for stuff too.
Great. Is it Kirsten? Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes.
Great.
I am supposed to graduate next semester, next spring, but I'm more than likely going back into the major because I'm just a certificate right now. So I'll probably graduate in 23, and I'm from an hour and a half away from Slippery Rock, closer to Pittsburgh. And my current major is communication PR.
That's a good one. Are you on campus then? Are you doing
that? I'm off campus, but I'm like 5 minutes from campus.
Okay, great.
Kirsten, want to talk about your certificates a little bit, because that's why you're staying, right?
Right now I'm a certificate in nonprofit management, and you get the basics to the major, but it's just less time, but you still get certified.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm adding the writing for the nonprofit to be able to write grants, and adding the new certificate they just made for LGBTQ.
Oh, great.
And so I might be turning all three of those into the major and making writing and LGBTQ issues my emphasis.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Okay, Barbara, you're next on my screen.
My name is Barbara. I will graduate this August. I'm a social work major.
Oh, good.
I'm hoping to come back here in a few years and get do the major and the certificate. So.
Wow. You're not going to get your MSW?
I'm planning on it. I think I'm going to go straight for that and then come back.
That's a lot of school. So are you going clinical or non-clinical?
I'm not quite sure yet. So I'm just kind of waiting to see how my internship plays out this summer and see where I want to go.
What you learn. That's great. Okay, Christina.
My name is Christina, and I will graduate in 2024, and I have a dual major in psychology and philanthropy and nonprofit management.
I saw that.
I also have a minor in criminology. So
oh, wow.
I have a couple different options. I'm kind of leaning towards working with either incarcerated like families and their children and stuff like that, or I could go the opposite direction and do criminal psychology. I like my options.
Yeah. So what year are you?
I'm a freshman. I'll be a sophomore.
Okay, great. Semester. Wonderful. And where are you from?
Elizabeth, PA. It's about an hour and a half away from here.
Okay.
But I'm currently off campus, but I'm like 5 minutes away from campus.
So you're living in that area.
Yeah.
Okay. So Dallas and Maya, do you want to share with me, or are you trying to be incognito today?
I can share. I'm Dallas. Hopefully going to graduate next spring. I'm a dual English and communication major. And I'm not entirely sure where I want to go job-wise, but if I do end up in something nonprofit, I wouldn't mind like kind of leaning towards something that works with LGBTQ, especially LGBTQ youth.
Great. Wonderful. And
I'll share as well. Yes,
Great.
sorry. When I turn my camera on, it gets really laggy, so I apologize.
Totally fine. I'm not forcing you out. I just want to Give you the
Okay.
opportunity.
So I'm actually a freshman. I'm graduating in 2024. I live about 4 hours away from Slippery Rock, more towards Eastern PA. I am a French education major. And with that, I'm not sure if it's really like nonprofity, but I want to get into something like volunteering, like to teach English somewhere around the world. Cause I want to help kids learn English, you know? Yeah. So yeah.
Well, good. Well, that's wonderful. Well, I like having a little read on who I'm talking with so we can be more specific as we go through. I thought next I would share the same about me, but I added then because I have a past unlike you. And really, Alice told you most of it. The way I got into the nonprofit sector, I had just graduated from college and I had an international relations degree, which is fun to get and hard to get a job with. And I moved to New York, upstate New York, and I just could not find a job. I was very, I had no experience to speak of. I had waited tables in college, and I had this degree I loved, but it was pretty political science generic. It didn't make me particularly qualified for anything. And then I also had this language barrier because I was from the South and nobody could understand me in New York. So I was really spending a lot of time. I had just gotten married also. And I was really spending a lot of time in this tiny apartment that we lived in Syracuse, New York. And I was talking to my mom one day and she said, "You sound terrible. You really have got to get out of the house." Like, I was snowed in, the weather was really different than what I was used to. So I started volunteering and I loved it. And, I was new to the city. That's how I made friends. That's how I learned of the places we could go and eat dinner. That's how I learned of the places to go shopping. Volunteering provided me such a good social network that I just kept volunteering. And pretty soon I had 3 different volunteer jobs. And I really wasn't looking for a real job anymore. I kind of abandoned that because my 3 volunteer jobs were just so satisfying. But the problem was I had to pay to park at each job. So one was at Syracuse University, one was at a museum, and the third one was at a social services group. So by the time I had paid to park at all 3 places, my husband said, this job is costing us a lot of money, right? So you've got to decide if you're going to go to work or volunteer. So I started talking to my sister who was in graduate school at the time. And I was telling her, maybe I'll just wait tables at night so I can keep all these volunteer jobs because that's really what I want to do. And she's the one that told me there were whole degrees in this. Now this would have been 1995. So there were probably 300 nonprofit master's degrees in the United States. We're a very young field of study. So it wasn't a popular degree. I had no idea that you could work in service. And I certainly had no idea you could get a master's degree. So once I figured that out, I was really on a course, and that became my passion, and my whole purpose was to build a career in this area. So I got my master's in nonprofit administration. We were transferred back to Memphis. And so I actually did end up completing that degree at the University of Memphis. And I started doing really engaged service work. And what I found was that I did not have the emotional stamina to do frontline work. It was very difficult for me. And so I was really at a crossroads and a struggle of how do I have a helping career when I can't stomach what you see every day when you work in direct service. So that really pushed me towards what are the administrative roles in nonprofits and where could I find my same purpose helping, others, but just not on such a frontline capacity. So through that, I got into the role that Alice plays on your campus. I was in communications. My first several jobs were in communications. Jocelyn and Kirsten, I think, were the 2 that have communications degree. excellent degree for nonprofit work. So much, I mean, outreach, student recruitment, fundraising, you know, donor stewardship, all of that is about really solid communications. And grant writing too, which is a more technical form of grant writing, Dallas, but definitely it's so critical to every aspect of our job. So those are great degrees to go into it. So my first couple of jobs were in communications. And then I found I really liked workforce development, which at the end of the day is what my organization now, what we do. We develop talent for the nonprofit sector. So through serving in my role at the University of Memphis, I got to know this organization nationally. And when we had a change of leadership, the board of directors recruited me to come to Kansas City. And so I've been at the national office for 8 years. So really the great majority of my career has been with the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance, but it's been in so many different capacities. So I was a faculty member and a student advisor and a nonprofit liaison to campus. And now I'm in a totally different role. Everything I do is completely different from when I was on a campus. So where am I from? Still Memphis is where I would call home, but I've been here for 8 years. And then what's next for me? I really like this infrastructure piece that we're talking about. So how do people find jobs? How do we build the capacity that we need and the team that we have to be stronger and more effective in how we deliver our mission? Other infrastructure issues are like advocacy. So who's representing us in Congress when all of this legislation about how nonprofits are regulated, how we're funded, somebody has to be watching out for us. So that's an infrastructure role. There's also things like working to bridge some of the gaps between foundations and the money in our sector and the organizations. There are whole nonprofits that's what they do is, oh, I have a dog too. You'll just have to, he'll come in and out. So that's what I mean by infrastructure building, fundraising, advocacy. I would call it philanthropy, not direct fundraising, but how we build philanthropic practice in our sector. I really think that's next for me. But I also love this job. I could do it for a lot longer and not get restless. So we'll see. Okay, so that's my history. Not all of, who is getting the CMP? Just raise your hand, it's fine. Nobody. Oh, you're all gonna wanna enroll by the time I'm finished. So who is it? Alice? Oh, you're on mute.
I think Jocelyn and Kirsten, I've talked to them about it, but some of the other, and Barbara, I talked to her before, but some of the other students I don't know as well.
Okay. Well, I put a few slides in here so I can just introduce it. And then you can always follow up with Alice to get more information. So we've been around since 1948, which if you think about it, is really remarkable. We were barely a formal professional sector in 1948. But at that time, baby boomers' children were just rising in age to begin entering youth activities. So the YMCA and their camps and sports, and particularly, and then the Boy Scouts realized that they were going to have to hire a bunch of qualified staff over the next years to staff up to be able to be prepared for this influx of baby boomer children. So our founder, who was quite visionary, looked around and said, how do we get the right people into these jobs? We've got this huge opportunity here to shape the youth of our country. How do we do that? So he started our program on a very small campus at a college in Missouri Valley College, and it just grew from there. It was a strong program. It provided a great pipeline. Even in 1948, our very first graduating class had 2 females in it, which for 1948 was a lot of diversity in college graduation. So we've been committed to that for a really long time. Today, 36% of our CMPs are persons of color, which we're very proud of. It's something we have to continue working on. And we're extremely representative in all other forms of diversity. So LGBTQ, disability, we have a lot, you know, it's never surprising when you come to our conferences to see sign language interpreters or seeing eye dogs, those type things. So we really represent the sector in the students that we recruit. And that's important because of course our employing partners want to hire that same group of people that's reflective of the people they're serving, right? So that is the background of the organization. We're actually the only nationally recognized nonprofit management credential. There are a lot of certificates, but on a national scale with a credential, which is a little bit different than a certificate. Okay, so the CNP, Certified Nonprofit Professional, we're competency based. And what that means is instead of saying you have to have 36 credit hours or a minor 18 credit hours or whatever, what we've said is there are 10 core things that every nonprofit professional should know. And the truth is it's 10, I like to call it the toolbox. So it's the skills you need to add to your major. So whatever it is you really want to do, you want to do communications, you want to write grants, you want to maybe be a caseworker, Barbara, or French, you want to be a school teacher. So English as a second language, Maya. And Christina, what were you?
Psychology and
yes. Oh, criminology, reintegration services. I love the family programs for prisoners that are serving. I've worked with some really neat groups and they do such innovative things. So all of those are primary skills that you need, knowledge, right? You need to bring this understanding of the incarceration system with you, and your criminology degree will help you do that. But what are you also going to be doing? Well, as a program manager, you're going to be organizing volunteers, recruiting, rewarding, and doing job management with volunteers. You're going to be raising money to make sure you have the supplies to put the program on. You're going to be working with committee members, right? And board members, no matter what level you are in the organization, understanding those roles is critical. So all of those things are in this toolbox, and they will complement your major course of study and allow you to use the knowledge that you've gained in your major in a much more impactful way in the organization. Understanding how those pieces work will mean you can hit the ground running in your first job, because you don't have to get the on-the-job assimilation to a nonprofit. You'll have it when you go. So we know that this works. Not only have we been doing it for more than 70 years, but we did a LinkedIn study that showed that our nonprofit professionals that have a CNP are 7 times more likely to be at a director or higher level in their organization. So we took profiles of nonprofit professionals and we compared very similar profiles. So same education, same organizations that we're hiring, same infrastructure, same type of infrastructure organizations. And we compared them, and we know that this really does make a difference in your career pathway. So that's the organization I represent, and the credential, which I cannot urge you enough to get. I got mine when I was a student at the University of Memphis. That's when I say I kind of found this program and never left it, because first I was a student, and then I was on campus, and then I was a volunteer board member, and now I'm staff. So there's pretty much, and I give money, so I'm a donor. So I'm not sure if there's many roles that I haven't played. Okay, so now I just want to share, so that's what we do. Like every day, all of our work is focused on how can we get better talent in the nonprofit sector? And the majority of that is recruiting students like yourself into the sector. So the biggest hurdle is just awareness. Yes, you can get paid to do the work that you've been doing most of the time in your life as service, right? These are real jobs where you can make enough money to buy a house and pay off your student loans and drive a nice car. And that really is the first hurdle. Most people have a lot of misperceptions about employment in our sector. And it's really holding us back from attracting the top talent that we desperately need. So you've got your college and career counselors, your high school, it says to you, oh, you're too smart to go work in the nonprofit sector, which is such a fallacy, right? So our work really begins with that. How do you get into the nonprofit sector? Is it a viable career pathway? And what does it look like? So setting expectations for careers is a really important first step of getting your first job. And it's important to know that there are, I think it's 1.8 million nonprofit organizations right now in the United States. And when we say that, what we think of is the Y, or American Red Cross, or, you know, those really big brands that everybody knows. But the reality is that is such a small percentage of the organizations that are out there. Like 4% of all nonprofit organizations fall into those really large federated categories. So the great majority of our organizations, you know, the vast majority, 78%, I think it is, have a budget less than $500,000. So we're talking about staffs who are 50 people or less. They're mostly local or maybe regional in their focus. So a national organization is really unusual, right? Especially if you're not in New York or DC, where most of them are. So you have to think about that. What are you really, if you're going to stay, you're all kind of thinking of staying in this Pennsylvania area where you are, where there's a lot of little towns. I mean, unless you want to move to Pittsburgh, but even in Pittsburgh, you're not likely to find a national office of a nonprofit, or at least not many. I'm sure there are some. So most of our organizations are local, they have small budgets, and they have small staffs. Really, the big divide on subsectors is direct service. And as I said, I did not have the emotional stamina to do that. So even in an administrative role, if I had been in a place-based organization like CASA, have you all heard of CASA? They work with children who have been sexually abused. Even if I had been in an administrative role, that permeates that workplace environment. So it's set up for children. You see children coming in and out. It's very much the right thing to do, but it probably would not have worked for me. It was too much for me to take that kind of emotional stress. So I think it's really important to know when you go looking for a job, do I want to do direct service, or do I need a position that's maybe a little bit more removed and allows me to be more productive because it's an environment I can handle, right? I think type of incorporation is important to understand. The great majority of our organizations, and incorporation is based on your tax exempt code. So 501c3 is charity, and that's what most of us think of. Everything I've named today has been a charitable organization, but there are really good opportunities at other types of organizations. So my very first job was with a 501c6, which is a trade association. I had great experience there and transitioned very easily to other positions within the sector. So sometimes we overlook political organizations or trade associations that are more about your profession, but there are huge opportunities out there, particularly in both of those if you're very interested in advocacy. So if you want to get out there and impact regulations and do policy analysis and things like that, those other sectors can be great opportunities. So good thing to think about. And then finally, I would just say, not all nonprofits are set up to be warm, fuzzy, cozy places. We have some very large federated nonprofits that are purposely have corporate structures that make them much more reliable in terms of fairness. And, it's equal across the board. If you have a bad day and your dog ran away, they don't care, just like IBM doesn't care, right? So there's some of our nonprofit organizations purposely enforce that culture. And it's good to know if that's a better environment for you or not. Warm and fuzzy has drawbacks, right? Sometimes there's not a lot of fairness. There's preference, and the boards are actually much more involved, which can be good and bad. So you just got to know what's out there so you can make good choices about the organizations you're looking at for your job. Okay, so besides knowing the sector, of course, my favorite thing in the world, absolutely not, is when somebody comes to me and says, oh, could you help me find a job in the nonprofit? Absolutely. What do you want to do? I don't know. Well, I cannot help you find a job if you do not know what job you want. Literally, it is impossible. Just because you have a good resume and send it off to an open position doesn't mean you're going to get a job. You have to know several things about yourself before you can go job hunting. So personal mission is about, what are you passionate about? What can you wake up every day and want to go to work about? So is it LGBTQ issues? Do you want to work with animals? Even grant writing is a technical skill that you could apply to anything. If you want to do it really well, you got to be passionate about what you're writing those grants for. So yes, there's the functional side of things, but there's also, we're in it for the mission. And particularly if you're going warm and fuzzy, you're going to need to understand that mission base and really be passionate about it and be able to get involved from that way. So that's what I mean by personal mission. Professional goal. We shouldn't assume that everybody wants to be the CEO of a nonprofit, when they grow up. They don't. Lots of people don't ever want to get that far away from the mission or from the client. So what is your professional goal? What is your career map? That is something that I will tell you, we do not do enough of in our sector, and we don't do it well. So pathways in our sector are complicated. They don't take just, if you want to be the CFO of a company, you start as accountant 1 and you move to accountant 2, and you know what I'm saying. Then you're a senior accountant and finally you're CFO. There is no pathway in the nonprofit sector that looks that. We have done research at the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance to say, what are the similarities in career pathways for CEOs of nonprofit organizations? The only single consistency is a 4-year degree. That's it. It could be in anything. It could be in, I don't know, underwater basket weaving was the silly example we used to use, but that is the only similarity. So you have to have a map for yourself. And often the best way to get that is to talk to a mentor or someone who's in the position where you want to be. Now, the other thing I can tell you about progressing through your career is that you have to, if you want to be top leadership, you have to embody a mission. So let me give you an example that just passed. So the previous CEO of Feeding America was always in food. Okay, he worked for Monsanto, and then he worked for McDonald's, and then he led Feeding America. So even though it wasn't nonprofit experience, he was always passionate about food. And embodying that, having that whole industry perspective from years of experience climbing the ranks was really critical in how he made the shift to Feeding America. So 1 and 2 are closely, or bullet 1 and bullet 2 are very closely aligned here, and they're just critical to be thinking about now. I don't think these are things you're gonna write down on a piece of paper overnight when you start looking for a job. So these courses that you're taking, these volunteer experiences, look around, understand what you like. And that goes with productive environment. I think this bullet is probably more important now than before COVID. So some of us have learned that I'm okay working remotely. Maybe that's just fine for me. That opens up a world of different job opportunities for you. So we only have 9.5 FTEs. We have 1 part-time person. So we have 10 people working for us, and we have somebody in every single time zone in the United States. And we're small, you know? You would think a small organization, we all have to show up at the office every day. That is not at all how the world operates. However, that is the most productive environment for some people. Another thing some people have learned is I'm not productive from home. I have to have interaction. So I think that's going to be even, it's been on my list for quite some time. What is your productive environment? Is it warm and fuzzy, or is it more structured and we can all expect to be treated the same way and we all have the same expectations for showing up? None of these are right and wrong. They are all just important to know about yourself. And let me tell you the number one reason to get this slide and the slide before this right, so that you love your first job. Because if you hate your first job, it will turn you away and you will go work at the bank because that's easy. And then we will lose, this nonprofit sector will lose the talent we need. So again, workforce development, what I like to preach about, what I'm passionate about, helping people figure these things out so they make great first job choices and just fall in love with the nonprofit sector like I did, right? And like Alice did, and so many people before us. Okay, so that's why those are important. Let me just stop. I'm going to give some job tips, and then I was just going to open it up for whatever's on your mind. We have 23 minutes left. Any comments, questions on the know yourself, know the sector piece? Are we good? Okay. On know the sector, if you're moving, so much of like how many nonprofits are there? Are there any national organizations? Who's the local United Way? You can learn all of that online. You can look so much of that up. So study the sector of where you're looking for a job, okay? Don't think you know it just because you live there. Get some data on what to expect, and that'll really help you advance your job search too. So just where to find a job, I am going to tell you national job boards and LinkedIn Recruiter and ZipRecruiter, and they are too expensive for nonprofits. Nonprofit jobs are not on mainstream job sites. I just made an absolute, of course, it's not absolutely true. There are a ton of jobs on Indeed and other places. However, most of us are going to go to our free local job boards. And that's usually from what we call an MSO, a management support organization. Oh, Alice, who's my friend that is so funny that's right near you that you introduced me to? Roxy and...
Oh, Roxanne Tiger.
Yes.
Oh,
What's her organization?
Alliance for Nonprofit Resources.
Okay, that's an MSO, and they have a job board. I promise you, you're going to be more productive in a local or regional job board. Now, don't hear me say not to look on Indeed or Monster or whatever, but really, even as a national organization, we can't afford big job sites. So that's where we post our jobs with our graduates because we want to hire our graduates. But most of us are looking for much more affordable local solutions.
In Pittsburgh, we have one called nonprofittalent.org.
Okay.
And they're not so much, not really only entry level, they're a little bit higher level sometimes, but there are a lot of jobs at nonprofittalent.org also.
Fabulous. Well, I really recommend that. And there's usually a lot more jobs on those that would fit you. Keep your online profile. So I just said, nobody looks. Do I think people recruit nonprofit employees from LinkedIn? No, I do not. I don't think anybody has ever done that, searched and hit you up on in messages to find a job. What I do think is, if you want me to help you use my network, then it's really easy for me to just copy the link for your LinkedIn profile and text it to somebody and say, hey, this person is awesome, help me find her a job. So I do think keeping your LinkedIn profile really tight and up to date, and we have some great resources at the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance on how to do a nonprofit LinkedIn profile. Don't forget your volunteer experience. Don't forget the student association that you participate in. So all of those things are much more valuable in a nonprofit setting than they might be in a more corporate setting. But I mean, you know this, check your other social media so you're not acting crazy on social media. I do think nonprofits search that. I really do. You know, not just background checks anymore. We can figure out what you've been up to just by getting on the web. So, but I cannot stress enough the importance of making it easy for people to help you network. And essentially that means LinkedIn these days, y'all. Email me a PDF attachment and I'm like, oh God, now I gotta go download it so I can write my own email and read it. So just make it easy. Informational interviews. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say an informational interview, anybody? Okay. So Alice, I want to work in, give me something crazy. Now, of course, I'm blanking. Okay, housing, homelessness, rehousing veterans. I've got this really specific passion. So I've looked, there are no job postings, but Alice knows the CEO of our local Volunteers of America Association. And so she's going to introduce me and I'm going to say, I just want to come by and visit with you and understand more about what your organization does and see what your staffing plans are for the next year. No CEO is going to be offended by that. None. That is honestly what we spend our whole day doing, is sharing our passion for our mission. And if they can share that with you in a 30-minute interview, they will love it. And you bring your resume and they get so impressed. I have seen, as tight as our budgets are, nonprofits will figure out a way to add a staff member if it's really critical to them. But even if they can't do that or don't do that, you'll be top of mind the next time they have something open. And then the other big thing from an informational interview, you will learn something, you will get interview practice, you will make an impression on the person you interview with, but you can also, as your final question, say, is there anyone you could introduce me to that works in this space that might be another good contact for me? And almost always they're happy to do that and help you build your network in a very specific field, like rehousing veterans. It may also be that you're more interested in being a fundraiser or a volunteer manager. You know, it may be a functional interest that you want to do in informational. And that's good because we all have peer networks. You know, the one volunteer manager in your city is on a listserv with all the other volunteer managers, and we're sharing information all the time. So you can think of it from a functional perspective too, not just a mission perspective.
And you know, Susan, you don't be embarrassed. Don't think that you're tooting your own horn. Don't be embarrassed, because you know what? Ain't nobody standing in line to toot your horn. No. If you aren't going to go do,
this is the one time you should be arrogantly bold.
And if you're not, you know, if you're not confident enough to say, you know, I think I would like to be a program director for LGBTQ plus programming in an organization, and I know your organization does that. Could I come and spend a half an hour with you to find out what it is that you do? You know, people love to tell you about their jobs.
They do.
But if you don't ask them, they're not looking for you either. So
no,
you got to kind of get out of that.
They don't know they need you, right, Alice?
Yeah, and you kind of got to get out of your own way and just be willing to say, you know, I tell my students this all the time. My dad, Susan knew my dad. My dad used to say, look, Alice, the worst they can do is tell you no. They can't rip your arms off and they can't eat them. And I don't know why he said that, but every time I'm in that kind of like, oh my God, what if they say no? I get the Walt message in my head. And that just makes me say, okay, enough already, go do it. So, you know,
his vision of the worst thing that could happen, they tear off your arms and eat them.
Yeah, he said the worst they can do is tell you no. They can't rip off your arms and they can't eat them. But, you know, but when you're thinking about, oh, they might think I'm dumb, or oh, they might think I'm too busy, you know, let them make that decision. But they can't make the decision if you don't ask.
And you know what? Sometimes it is going to be awkward. It just is. Oh my gosh, do not go into fundraising if you don't want to have an awkward conversation because, people are just awkward. So I think one thing of putting yourself out there is you just have to be okay with it just being a little awkward. Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother web call because I have got some fabulous stories about calling on people and it getting awkward. So if that's what you're scared of, just get over it. You are going to have so many awkward conversations in your life. And if you set yourself up and ask the right questions, Alice, right, there's not going to be any quiet moment where you don't know what to say. People love to talk about their jobs. They're passionate about their work. It'll be great. And it's a strong tactic for finding a job that people overlook because they're a little intimidated by it. Network. I can't say it enough. Anyway, I mean, your church, your mom's coworkers. Another reason to just hound LinkedIn is set your sights and go see who you know or who knows somebody you want to meet with. And, this. I can't say enough about that. One that I didn't put on here, if you are really targeting a specific place, I think volunteering is a great way to get a job there. You get to know the people when the job is opening, you're the first one to know about it. Sometimes you read things like it's kind of frowned on to be serving on a board of directors, but then become the CEO, which is A, what I did, and B, that is everybody I know that's a CEO. That's how they became a CEO. So I don't know why we set that standard. There's some conflict of interest and your process has to qualify that, but and I'm not saying you have to serve on the board. You can go volunteer in the programs room and you're going to get the dirt on it. You're going to know what the culture is. You're going to be in a much better place to go after a job there. And then finally, if you do decide to get your CMP credential, you can help. See this little button? You can help just like mine. We do have a program called Career Lift. It's a whole bevy of services just that we can provide for you. You can get a mentor, a CMP mentor that's more established in the sector to really coach you through a lot of questions to bounce things off of. I'll tell you, your first salary negotiation, having a mentor to help you frame your conversation and get your data straight. So that's on Career Lift, on-demand videos on all kinds of interviewing stuff. We do have a job posting board, but you don't have to be a CMP to see that. You can find those on our LinkedIn feed. We put all of our jobs there. Hey, and I do have a communications internship that's about to come open with in LA. Wink, wink. It can totally be done remotely. It's digital communications. And Alice, they're working on the job description today, so it'll go to our faculty when we have it ready.
Susan, if I could just interrupt for a second.
Sure.
Slippery Rock, there are, is it 22 campuses, legacy campuses?
22.
So there are 22 campuses that are national affiliates with the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance. We are the only one north of Washington, D.C. and east of Dayton, Ohio, in the whole northeastern part of the United States. We are also the only university in Pennsylvania that has an undergraduate major, minor, and a number of certificates in nonprofit management. If you're at Slippery Rock and you have the time, and you can probably find the time because the major is pretty fluid, it's kind of silly to want to work in the sector and not do the major.
Yeah.
And because if you do our major, you're going to be set up to not only get the degree that's, only in Pennsylvania and the Northeast, not very many schools, but you'll be one of very few in this region that have the certified nonprofit professional, the CMP behind your name. You, at this point, unless you're doing the CMP through our academic program, you won't be able to get the CMP.
Yeah.
Until maybe later after you graduate or something. But you won't be able to get the CMP just by applying for it. You have to be part of our program, and having been part of our program is going to set you up so that you're 100% going to pass it. And I'll tell you why, because the competencies that Susan talked about.
That we did, or no, that we
Yeah.
made together.
Yeah, there were 5 of us that wrote those competencies in the Apple Butter Inn right in Slippery Rock.
I've been to the Apple Butter Inn.
And you've been to the North Country Brewery too, right, Sus?
I'm sure I have. I don't know.
So anyway, the point is, you know, our program helped to develop the competencies. And so our program is 100% in line with the competencies.
Yeah.
And that's kind of an important thing for you to think about. It's good to be able to say, I want to work in the nonprofit sector, but I would argue that if you could, it's even better to have this national credential that says, oh, this person knows how to work in the nonprofit sector.
Yes. That's why I call it the toolbox that complements that main thing you want to do. You know, you want to work with children, but this is like the publishers, or not publishers, good housekeeping seal that says, and you're prepared to do it. Our partners who hire our CMPs say it's the equivalent of 2 years experience on the job. Can you imagine cutting your first job learning curve down by 2 years? The stress that saves you alone. So here's our website, but quite honestly, you're going to go click on Slippery Rock and it's going to tell you to go talk to Alice if you go to our website. But you're welcome to go to it and find her contact information there, and some more information about us. But Alice is really the contact to get you enrolled in the CMP program. We have a huge network. We just do these little wraparound services and touches to your degree that give you the bigger scope of the sector, that it's national. There's tons of us out there. There's worlds of opportunity. Don't settle on the job at the bank if what you really want to do is have a helping career. We will help you find it. I will personally help you find a job. I'm excellent at helping people find jobs. So I talked a lot and I didn't mean to, but I'm happy to answer any of your questions and hear your comments. And I don't have a hard stop if we need to stay on to do that. You're all set and ready to go get your jobs in the sector.
I just wanted to say that I thought it was nice that you talked about the work environment, because I volunteer at a local nursing home, and I was just there yesterday, and I came home and I was telling my mom that I love older adults and we had so much fun with the activity we're doing, but we're in the basement of this facility with outdated wallpaper, and it's just like dark and dreary, and I like, this is a horrible like environment for these people, and like I don't think I would want to work there full time, because then I would just feel dreary from it too. So like I just really appreciated that, because it was like, oh yeah, like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous that nonprofits have to have, you know, hand-me-down computers and hand-me-down desks and chairs. That's ridiculous. We're professionals. We deserve to work in professional environments. I think a lot of that is changing, Caitlin, but it is a reality that our budgets are tight. And that is certainly the model that we followed for a lot of years. But a big piece of what we're trying to do, and so many people in our field are trying to do, is professionalize this career pathway. You know, to say there is a set of skills that are distinctly unique to nonprofit management. And we're not just losers that couldn't get real jobs or volunteers who started working, had to go back to work. You know, we are not auxiliary, the ladies auxiliary anymore. These are career pathways that we are choosing our freshman year at Slippery Rock University, and we're going to take a dedicated course of study, and we want to be compensated and have environments that respect that. And I think you'll see, you know, that's unfortunate that you had that environment, because it's also about dignity to your clients. You know, they deserve to feel empowered when they are participating. I'll tell you the best ever combo. When I was a faculty member, I used to like to go to Choose Your Major Day, you know, where everybody has a booth. And no matter what people thought they were interested in, I could tell them what they could do with a CMP in the nonprofit sector with it. And you know, you get some crazy ones, but honestly, there's a job for every single major in the nonprofit sector. So I was on Georgia State campus, and I met this woman who was in our program, and she was getting an interior design degree with her CMP. And I said, what are you going to do with that? And she said, I think nonprofit offices should reflect their mission. There should be branding that should really embody the values and what they're trying to accomplish. And that's my goal, is to have a whole interior design practice that's just improving nonprofit workspaces. And I was like, you were going to make $1 million. I think it's genius. And what a great passion to have. So it is starting to matter, Caitlin. I think it's really smart of you to know that that's not motivating for you and you're in a different space. I also want to, do you know the organization Generations United? Love their newsletter. I get it. My mother lives with me, so they featured us in a newsletter. So I got on their newsletter list. They're such a great organization. I know a ton of people at their national office. Hit me up when you're ready for a job. Anything else? Well, I love being with you. I learn as much as I share. So please contact me if I can ever help you. Certainly, I would love to see your name come across my desk for a signature on your credential. But if that doesn't happen, it's not like I'm not happy to be a contact of yours or help you in any way that I can. So good luck.
Can you talk a little bit about how many people work in the nonprofit sector? Because I know a lot of times students' parents will say, you're not going to make any money there and you're not going to get a job. And why don't you, whatever. So how many people work in the sector? What's the starting wage?
Yeah. So I told you 1.8 million organizations. You would die at the number of those that are voluntary. And then faith-based is not counted in there because they're not required to file. So I would say there's probably, I think it was 1.4 million people working in the nonprofit sector. So I mentioned the 1.8 is because so many of those don't even have paid staff. 1.4 million is the last number I remember for employees. Those are all paid, compensated positions. So that's where the discrepancy comes from. Educating parents on the opportunities in the nonprofit sector is one of the things we did. That's what I call career awareness. That's my nice word for educating our parents and other influencers about what we want to do. There's a whole page on our website that has data to help you educate people about that. Fair wage, we aren't equal to corporate, but over the last 10 years, we have outpaced both corporate and government in our rise in compensation. So we're closing the gap and we're working at it. We know we need to do it to attract top talent. And we know that nonprofit jobs are often harder than equal jobs in a corporate environment. So we should be compensating people for doing those jobs. So we aren't quite, we haven't quite closed the gap, but we're gaining on them. And all of that data is available on my website, on the NLA website. I do think we should just talk about it. Some of that's going to change because of COVID. So we lost a lot of positions in organizations. There are some studies out there that have not come to fruition that, a bunch of nonprofits that closed won't reopen. That since we were included in both the payroll protection programs 1 and 2, we haven't seen as much of that as was originally projected. So there's some big numbers out there that we have not seen come true, but we haven't reached the end of it either. There was an 83% decrease in giving during the COVID months to nonprofit organizations. Any company in America that lost 83% of its revenue would have to shutter its doors. So yes, there will be some of that. Now we've rebounded, generosity rebounded as well, but those are just really fresh statistics that people are trying to understand. So don't be dissuaded by them. I think they're, you know, all the data from 2020 is going to be a freak show. So look before that and you'll see some really good job growth and some really good wage growth and things like that.
Well, and after the downturn in 2008, when the economy fell apart, you know, the nonprofit sector continued to grow. At the same time, the business sector lost about 12% of its employees. So
That's
it's not just the nonprofit sector that's lost employees now. And I haven't seen the numbers that show the difference between nonprofit and private. I mean, nonprofit and for-profit, and government. But I don't think we're down really any more than
they are. No, I don't.
Those other sectors.
And when you look at industry specific, you know, like hospitality and food has been hit way harder than manufacturing.
Yeah, and so and in Pennsylvania, the more people work in the nonprofit sector than any other sector. About 689,000 people in Pennsylvania work in the nonprofit sector. And if you're in Allegheny County, about 1 in 4 people work in the nonprofit sector. So if this is your area, you've got potential for growth. And if you're staying in Western Pennsylvania, there are a lot of nonprofit organizations here. And this past week, I got 5 emails saying, I've got a job. You got somebody, Alice? I've got a job. I got an internship, Alice. You got somebody? Right now, I got somebody from ARC, which is Association for Retired Citizens. They're looking for somebody to do an internship that's paid. And a lot of nonprofits don't pay interns, particularly in the middle of COVID. Huh?
My internship pays well.
So, I mean, you know, the point is, people know our program. We've been here for 25 years and people say, hey, I got something. So don't be dissuaded by what you read about, oh, I probably won't get a job, because, you know, I can remember when I was in 5th grade, I read this study that said that there was going to be too many teachers in 1975, which was when I was going to graduate from college. And I was all upset because I wanted to be a teacher. And so I went to my teacher and said, Mrs. Warren, I'm really concerned because, you know, they're saying that there won't be teaching jobs when I graduate. And she said, Alice, of course I was 12, right? But she said, Alice, look, if you're good, you're going to get a job. The first job you get might not be the one you want, but I guarantee you, if you're good at what you do, people will smell it and they'll grab you. And you know what? I had a job before I graduated from college. So, you know, if at 12 years old, I'd said, oh my God, I'm not going to get a job. I better go work at a bank or whatever. I'm not beating up on banks, but you know, then I wouldn't be doing what I do. So don't be discouraged by the data. If your heart is there and you're willing to roll up your sleeves, you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah. I think there's tons of employment out there. I think also don't jump at the first job you get. If somebody says to you, we don't provide health insurance, and they have more than 5 employees, that you need to run. Like, they don't value their employees. There's no reason for people in the nonprofit sector to settle for less. You should have a 401k program. You should have health benefits, you know. All of that can be expected. And those are things we didn't used to have. And your parents may be, or your best friend or your partner may be saying, but how can we live on that? We can. The real jobs are out there. Okie dokie.
All right. Thank you so much, Susan, for being here. We appreciate you.
Yeah, well,
I can't wait till we can get back together again. Is it looking like we might have a conference in Indianapolis in
yes, October? I think Dorothy just inked that this week. She put it on my calendar, which means I'm supposed to be there, so you should be there too.
Yes, so a lot of you who are getting ready to graduate will actually be able to take you to a conference in October, maybe real life even. So yeah, good. Thanks again, Susan. Have a great week. It's good to see you again, as always.